All right. Hello? You guys there?
Yep.
Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. It is time. If you got questions, I got them answers. Cool. You guys are all satisfied with the class. Thank you for taking it. See you guys later. Just kidding. Could you imagine
I'll think
It's
some
like a-
more and get back to you.
if I just abruptly ended the class like that? Yeah, I've been working on this AAA game and I loved it and the experience was great, but it just made me more want to make my own thing. I was like, oh man, why can't I just sit down and just make my own thing then? Let me just do it. You know? Make my own projects. So I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm going to make my own thing. You guys might see stuff in the coming months. Progress. After seeing my good friend Vitaly Bogorov make his own thing, and it looks like it's going to be a success. Now I don't know whether the game is going to be any good. I played the beta; it was cool, but I can see that again, it fits a very niche audience. But I think that niche audience loves those games, so I don't know. I think he'll be all right. His team's pretty small too. I don't think they got like a massive team. Yeah, check this out. You just got to do this. Nearest neighbor. Change it to 200 maybe. Oh no, 100. There we go. Dun, dun, dun. Done. Pixel art.
Whoa.
So I paint already pretty quickly, right? I paint even faster in pixel art. Now, interestingly, if you go straight into pixel art, it's actually very challenging, you know, because you have to be even more methodical about every line and shape and whatever, right? Like everything matters, you know? And there's something to be said that like when you have such limitations, it's really hard to like get it all right. You know what I mean? But even though that's true, it's not like that crazy, you know? Like not as crazy as painting something photorealistic, you know, like a fresh design that has material indication that's amazing. That is obviously going to be hard, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I learned that you can just, as long as you get the right kind of methodology of putting things together, you can kind of make a pretty good start to your pixel art. And then from here, just correct it, you know? And what I love about pixel art too is that it allows for interpretation. There's like a little bit of an impressionistic element to it that's also pretty cool, you know?
Yeah. It has a very unique kind of vibe.
Yeah, like although it's like a digital style, right? Like pixels, it ultimately became a style, you know? And
Yeah, it was because like they were just like limited to whatever graphics processor that they had at the time, and then it just now people try to copy that, which is just kind of an interesting concept.
yeah, I got this game recently. It's called um Devil daggers. I'll send this to you guys. So I was doing some research, and I was like, this game speaks to me so much. Because it's like devilish. And then also the style of it is like super cool.
Reminds me of Doom.
Yeah, exactly. Like the weapons, like the cool, like Cthulhu looking demon motherfuckers. You know? Oh, it's so cool.
I think it's satisfying watching these splat.
Look at that. Look at that. Like even like the creature designs, they're like pixelated, right? But there's like something about them though that just like looks cool, like the way they're designed. Like I don't know how they're like like it's like how they're sculpted. It's like actually well sculpted, but under this like pixelated filter, you know? It's just really cool. So I don't know. I'm like nerding out on it, fanboying. But I'm gonna get back to the pixel art world of glory. There's this game called Owlboy. So this game, there's this idea of calling it high bit graphics. High bit as in, you know, what a Nintendo 64 was still just 2D games, and then they went to Nintendo 128, and it was still 2D games. Like 3D wasn't a thing. You know, like what would a 128-bit game look like?
That's interesting.
You know, where they had a little bit more bits, but they didn't spend them on 3D. You know, like Final Fantasy 7's kind of bit like that. You know, or the Metal Gear Solid game on the PlayStation 1. But they still use 3D, you know. So
Yeah, those games look kind of weird now because they're just so different.
I love the way they look. Like it could
Final
be my
Fantasy VII especially has a very strange like.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of a bad example.
Okay.
But Metal Gear Solid 1, there's something still good about its aesthetic, even though it's like lo-fi. Right? Like if you watch it, it's like, yeah, definitely super low graphics. But watch. Let's get them out. Like there's a charm to this. It's like it just feels kind of like it's not like terrible. It's kind of like, oh, you know. Yeah, I mean, compared to Call of Duty, it's just fucking nothing. But there's something about this like aesthetic where it's charming. You know, I look at this. There is this Unreal Editor material that replicates this kind of screen tearing effect that you get from these old games. And it's like this kind of like listening to music on records type of vibe is what I'm getting whenever I see people do this type of stuff, you know? Like
Mhm.
look at those hand painted pecs and delts, you know? And again, it wasn't like they were trying to do that, right? It wasn't like they're trying to fit this nostalgic aesthetic. Like this was like the best graphics at the time, you know? And there's something about like a large effort of skill was put into this to make it look this way. Like this doesn't look bad because you can tell that there was some effort put into it, you know? Like even though it's super low graphics. And I'm thinking like there's something here where you can remix this kind of old style with some new techniques and ingenuity, and there could be something special there, right? You look at a game like Fez. Have you ever heard of Fez?
Yeah, that game's cool.
Yeah, so that game is a great example of that. Or even though, like, you know, when I showed you the last night, right? That's another great example. But like, this is like, this person doesn't have to make a pixel art looking game. but they use like 3D to their advantage, right? The fact that you can have 3D as a puzzle mechanic. And this game got a lot of praise and love, you know? You can do like a lot more fluid animations too. You know, back then they would be very strict about how many frames because it's all memory. But if you're going low res, you could probably get away with like 100 to 200 frames animations, you know? But I found that even though you can, like, it's still like there's something about like not having that many frames that makes it charming. Anyway, here, let me paint a creature. It's been a while since I painted something dark. It's scary. Start with some color too. Let's just jump right into it. I was talking to some people today and they're like, yeah, don't draw any, like, you don't, so, oh, you must love drawing creatures. You have a lot of creatures in your portfolio. And I was like, you know, I do like drawing my creatures, but if you were to ask me, do I like the creatures that I've done professionally? You know, I'm kind of like, I don't know, you know, like, I don't like horror movies, which is a
Yeah,
bizarre thing
you
to
wouldn't think
say.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you meet me like in real life, you'll see that I'm like a Californian, you know, like I wear sandals, shorts, baseball cap, you know? Like I'm outdoorsy. Do you see what I'm saying? Like I'm like someone you would never expect to draw the things that I draw. You would expect someone that has like a goatee, long hair, some sort
Tattoos
of,
and like
yeah, like tons of tattoos, like a metal band on my shirt, you know, like Slayer or something. Right? I'm like wearing like Gap clothing, gym shorts, you know. I
yeah, a
look,
lot of the people that I know that are like metalheads or love horror and everything like that, you just wouldn't be able to tell.
yeah, and it's funny too. I have a friend who's like, who is like the description that I'm giving you.
Mm-hmm.
He draws like beautifully stylistic, cartoony stuff.
Oh,
Right?
interesting.
He's like a
So he's like
metalhead
the
and
total
everything.
opposite.
Yeah, like his personal taste is like super hardcore metal. Like he's like tatted up, but he's like all about stylistic aesthetic. So clearly it's a stereotype, but it's just a funny one. People also imagine me taller. People imagine that I'm like 7 feet tall. It's because of the way I talk. I have like a deep voice. I sound big. But no, I'm average, 5'9". I'm not tall at all. I am just your average Joe. I
Yeah, you can't
remember when
always
I
judge a book by its cover.
you can totally judge a book by its cover.
Okay, if you want.
You just shouldn't.
Mhm.
But if a book says like how to, you know, on the cover of the book it says how to, like, you know, cut up sushi, and you're like, I'm not gonna judge this book. And then open up, it's about cutting sushi. You know, you could have totally judged it. It'd be actually kind of weird if you opened it up and it's about, like, you know, making dice. You're like, what the?
I think
What?
that's
See?
what covers are for.
Yeah, I think it's more of a, it works as a metaphor than actual. I'm taking it very literal. But it's just funny, I like to rebut with that. I'm gonna make a book called "Don't Judge This Book by Its Cover," and it just has a random cover on it every time. But yeah, I mean, I met all sorts of people in the industry, and yeah, this is generally true. Like, not everybody you can tell what they're about by the way they look, which is a good thing. It'd be boring if you could just look at someone right away and know everything about them. You know. Yeah, I was talking to my friends about this too, because we were talking politics last night too. Because I was telling them, we're gonna definitely homeschool our kids or do distance learning, or our kids are just not gonna go to school. And I was like, it's just so weird to me that people just can't see that. It's like, especially in America, like, it's just so political. Like, the fact that Trump said something, like, people should just not listen to, and the fact that other politicians say something depending on which team you're on, it's a weird thing. Like, there's this really amazing meme that I saw where, when they were talking about Trump and all his sexual allegations, right? Like, you could see all of the left-leaning media like going all in on him, right? Like, fucking monster. Like, how can we let someone like this be our president, right? And then when Joe Biden has his sexual assault allegations, like, crickets.
Yeah, pretty
It's
much.
just kind of like, hey, listen, man, like, let's be consistent here, right?
I even like forgot about that whole case just because you just don't see it
Yeah, nobody talks
talked
about
about.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, like the Brett Kavanaugh stuff, like, everyone's like, burn him, and then Joe Biden,
Yep.
and I'm like, wait, and let me be clear, I'm not also just immediately assuming that these things are true. I just think that there is value of, like, let's look into it. Statistically speaking, most women are sexually assaulted. It's just the truth, and so, like, just kind of like the inconsistency is like a great example of, like, partisan, like, divide, in our nation. And I was just talking to them about that kind of stuff, like how, like, we just see this everywhere, and it just blows my mind that people just can't get along, and that these teams are existing. We saw this in the art industry too, where, I mean, we still see it, where people who do photo bashing versus painting, 3D versus photo bashing, digital versus traditional. It's the same bullshit, you know. During my talks, whenever I would talk about this, I'm gonna drink something right now. Whenever I would talk about this type of stuff, I would tell people, there, and I think I told you guys about this. Like, there's a strategy to do whatever, whatever you decide you want to do. Just got to do it good. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
and I talked about how there was a time where people used to paint things using tempura, which is like eggs and
Yeah, I
just
remember.
fried stuff. Yeah. And then oil painting came out. I'm sure people are just like, oil painting, like, that shit dries. You guys are chumps, or is that
Yeah,
shit
now we
never
make fun of
dries?
them for using eggs.
Yeah, and then yeah, and then I'm sure, like, acrylic came, or markers, and people are like, whatever. You guys having all these colors available to you too? How dare you, right? And then, digital started rolling around, and now all the traditional artists are like, digital, you know. And then what else you got? Oh yeah, and now we got, like, the photo bashing and 3D stuff, and now people are like, and, like, I try to tell my friends you should get on Blender, and they're like,
Mhm.
and I'm like, why? Why
Yeah,
are people so resistant?
there will always be elitists and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love ZBrush, but I was like, stop using ZBrush now. Like, use 3D Coat. It's pretty great. People are like, ZBrush is not going anywhere. And I honestly didn't believe that. I thought it was going to die. I was like, look, if they don't go subscription model, I just can't imagine how they're going to survive. I just can't, you know? And they went subscription model. I was like, oh, well, there you have it. The same thing about my kids. I was talking about like how I'm not going to send them to school for the same thing. It's like the scientists are saying, like, this is fucking real, y'all. You know, this isn't a joke. And I told my wife, I was like, yeah, our kids aren't going to school because it's so obvious that they're going to close the school again, you know? And we don't want to be caught with our pants down, right? Like what happened last time, you know? And so we just opted for the social, or the distance learning, right? And we just got an email today. They're like, nah, we're closing. We're going to do distance learning. There is no in-person school. And
How does that work with younger kids?
No, it's just, just like this, just with kids.
Oh, does it sound like a Zoom call?
Yeah, no, there is a Zoom call. That's what I'm saying. Like it's
Okay.
just like they get homework and they talk with their teacher. They submit everything online. The problem was that was not a thing. Like they didn't, like schools weren't like, okay, we have plans for pandemics,
Right.
And it was like a chaotic mess, right? And I told my wife, like, not only should we prepare for this, we should just prepare to start homeschooling our kids too, like on the side, right? So I've been teaching them multiple stuff. The only things I'm not teaching them too good is science and history. So I've been looking into how to teach that. I don't know much about science or history. All the science that I know is mostly like science admiration, not like actual like science shit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I'm more like a Neil deGrasse Tyson on YouTube or Bill Nye who like talks about cool stuff in science. But I'm not those guys when they are talking about equations and mathematical, like how that stuff actually works. Like I don't know how to do that. But anyway, my point is that like that they were going to do it anyway, and so they did, and that's actually a good thing because now they can prepare for it properly, right? Since they can have already just decided. This idea of like talking about it was so weird to me. It's like, dude, we had our chance as a nation and we fucked it up. And California is one of those places that fucked it up. Right? It's like we were given an opportunity and most people said, yeah, no. And so we're paying the price for it. It's just how it's got to be.
I wonder how countries like Sweden, like they didn't lock down at all.
I think we're gonna see how it goes in fall, but it's actually not been looking good for them. It's been getting worse and worse. And then sometimes it'll just not be bad at all. So they're like, okay, it's not, but then all of a sudden it'll just go crazy. The nation as a whole is totally cool with it though. They're like, yeah, whatever, sacrifices are going to be made, but I think once it starts to get to a point where they're like, it's not within their control, they're going to second guess this, especially if it comes to find out there is no herd immunity, which some scientists are starting to believe this might be the case. And we have to start taking this even more serious. Some scientists have already thrown in the towel and they're basically saying, just imagine what it was like before vaccines, like how humanity lived their life without like antibiotics and vaccines, like that luxury may very well be gone. Now there's just a chance that you'll just get sick and fucking die, right? You'll get COVID and then your lungs will implode and you're dead now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is that there's always been kind of a chance of that with any like pneumonia or something like that.
Absolutely.
But
it's just now like this highly contagious disease that definitely kills old people. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And it may very well get worse. That's what I'm getting at. Like, because we do have stuff like the seasonal flu, but it's like not nearly as contagious. It's not nearly as deadly, And so we were just kind of okay with swallowing 200,000 deaths, I think it was, like a year. But it's only been a few months, and we're almost at 200,000 deaths in the States, right? We're at like 140 something. So like add 200,000 from the daily or from the yearly from the seasonal flu, and then add on top of that potentially another 300,000 to 400,000. So we're all okay now with 600,000 to 700,000 people dying a year. That's not great. That's a lot of people. Somebody did like a meme where they showed like a football stadium that had like 100,000 people, I think it was, and it was just packed. And he was like, or no, like it was like 10,000 people. I forget exactly. And he's like, imagine 10 of these. That's how many people died. So now imagine like 70 of those or something like this. That's crazy. Moral of the story, guys. Eat your vitamins. Any questions? I'm just like talking, buying some time for you guys.
I did have one about, it was like a Photoshop-y question.
Yeah, awesome.
About like the actions thing. Because that's
sure.
always something kind of like the stomach. Okay, like how do you use it? And what is it useful for?
I use it to do actions, and it's useful because of actions. So let's say you do a thing, like you make a new layer, you fill it up with black, you turn it to screen. Where's screen? And then you make a solid color layer. So gradient map, I mean, and you clip mask that, and that is it, right? So that was like a series of actions, and I use gradient maps quite a lot. And I'm like, okay, I'll just turn all of that into an action, meaning that if I just press the right hotkeys, it'll just do it. See?
Oh.
So, and I do this for whenever you would see me throw in like a, like a color dodge layer, overlay layer, multiply layer, and then.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Some stuff you can just put as just like a regular hotkey. That's not an action. It's just a hotkey making a new layer. So actions are that. That's it. So how do you make them? Pretty simple. Yeah, let me go to actions here and let me make a new one, and we'll call it whatever. And you can see you have an opportunity to put on a hotkey here. Let's say you did this and you did all that, right? Whatever. I'm not going to do that, but let's just say I did. Color code it. I'm not going to do it, but let's say I did, right? And you hit record, and now it's just paying attention. See right here, it has the red for recording. So it's paying attention to your every action. So let's say I just wanted to, I don't know, just make 5 layers, and the last layer is black. For whatever reason, there's just like a thing that I'm going to do. And then you can even do paint strokes, but it's not nearly as important, and I don't think it's a good idea maybe to have everything, but it would be funny to like put an action to draw an arm. I don't know, it looks like it didn't actually capture that. I'm looking right here, it doesn't seem like it did it, but then once you're done, you hit stop. Okay, and then you can just hit play right here, right, or the hotkey that you make, and it's going to do the same thing. Yeah, see that?
Oh, okay.
And then you can do this right here on this little drop down menu and do button mode, and you can have it just buttons.
Okay.
And then if you don't want it, it's just like anything else in Photoshop, you can delete it.
Okay.
And it can do most everything in Photoshop. The stuff that I think it has a harder time figuring out is like if you type stuff. Like renaming your layers, that's like a thing that I think it can do. But like picking a layer, like you got to be very careful, because if you are picking like the layer underneath, it may not be registering that accurately, right? It might be thinking of, oh, the layer called layer 45 because you had 45 layers and you picked the one below, right?
Yeah.
So you want to like find another way of like doing that action. Like if you want to go below, like do all this stuff and then select the layer below, you might want to like go about it in a way where it's like very procedural, like, you know, you're like actually saying go down or whatever, like in a, you're not clicking a layer so you're telling it to find the layer with that name. You're telling it wherever you're at, go down one layer, which I think you can actually do. I forget where that's at. So does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like you want to do
Yeah.
a thing that's like an action, not like, or like you want to do something that's like independent of like names and stuff, right? Like you want to be aware of that's what you're doing. If you are clicking a layer, it's going to look at layer one. So it's always going to be looking for layer one. And if you're okay with that, that's fine, right? If you build a system where you name, like before you get started, like you can rename this, for instance. Let's test it out actually. I could be wrong. So let's make a new thingy. Yeah, let's call it action one. That's fine. So make a new layer. We'll call it base. Yeah, set current layer. That's what I wanted. Then let's do all of the stuff. Build this to black, and then select base. Yeah, see here's a select layer base. But watch, you'll see there's going to be a problem with this potentially. So if I go here and go to action one and hit play, see how it went all the way down to the very first one?
Mm-hmm.
Not to the one that I was anticipating you would want to do.
Yeah.
This is kind of my point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you don't do this again, then maybe that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you do want to do it again, and like again, that's kind of very specific. I can't think of too many scenarios where that's what you would want to do right away. Other than like maybe you want to set a bunch of stuff up and then like they're all masked and clipped to this, and then you want to start painting like a silhouette of a character.
Yeah.
Knowing that you've already set up these things, whatever, right? There's all sorts of reasons you might do a thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But once you start to find that you're doing like a lot of repeated thingies, you know, like this type of stuff, like you know, like it doesn't really matter what the name is and all this kind of fancy stuff. Like it's actually not that big of a deal, you know?
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity for an action.
Or like making a bunch of folders for stuff.
Yeah, but again, I think that's like something that might be dangerous. So you would test like what you think an action could do for you that's really helpful. But yeah, if you find that you are doing something a lot that's very basic, an action can truly do it. Like you don't really want an action probably to do very complex stuff. Like making a new layer and calling it multiply is like, and putting it on multiply and doing all the layer adjustments that I would normally do, that's an action easily.
All right.
Like setting up settings could be things I think could be done through an action. I'm not sure. Any other questions?
How do you think like a portfolio should be structured? Like, does it just depend on whoever you're applying to, and like, do you think there's a certain number of, like, let's say items or something to be included?
Yeah, it just depends on who you're applying to. But generally speaking, I think it's good to have a character lineup, how you got to that character, and then character callouts and animation type stuff. Like, for instance, having how your character moves, like zoomed in, like shots of like the leg, whatever, you know, especially if it has a lot of detail. Something that you can give to a modeler, right?
Right.
I'm getting less and less like I tell people like you should just draw whatever you think is great and just feel that you're capable of designing, because what's happening is that like that need that you're talking about of like what you need a portfolio is slowly diminishing because more and more people are just going to be able to do the modeling part too. you know?
Yeah.
Like we were able to like do stuff in ZBrush that's pretty great. Like some people can concept entirely through ZBrush or 3D tools. Concept. So they're not worrying about like the high poly topology and like how dirty it is. They just kind of make it and then just show it to somebody, right? And somebody's like, cool. And sometimes they can pass it over to a modeler to then clean it up, right? Which is pretty helpful. But there's going to be a point where, no, that's good. That is it. I'm just going to throw it into the engine. Like the concept artist doesn't need to do a half-assed concept that then has to go through a cycle of different workloads, right? It can just make the asset, put it into the engine, and then you're done. So I think in terms of what you should put in your portfolio, the traditional sense, yes, everything I just told you, right? Like a character lineup, the design sketches that you've done to get to the character lineup, and then what you call it, character lineup, and then designs whatever that got there, and then like turnarounds and all this type of other production stuff, something that you can pass to a modeler and they can make it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. It's funny too because I get approached for work, and a lot of people, even when I got the job at Nexon, right? They're like, hey, do you have any concepts of this? Do you have any of that? Like people just weren't able to kind of, because I don't have a lot of that in my portfolio, right? In fact, I thought about it. I was like, maybe I should just put something like that in my portfolio. Just to like let people know, yeah, I can do it. I just don't share it because I don't really care for it. And more importantly, I try to tell people that I just design what is necessary. Sometimes people don't want that kind of stuff. Other people do, right? And I was trying to explain to somebody that like I have hundreds of drawings in my portfolio, and my main job is to teach. I teach, right? And what I was trying to do is try to attract our other artists. Right? My portfolio is built to attract students, which it does. It's like these sketches and these designs that just feel so free. It really shines a light on the fun part of being a concept artist, but it doesn't necessarily paint the whole picture of what it is to be a concept artist. And like the reality is like you should have like concepts of like crates too, like boxes. Can you design a cool box? I've done plenty of my box designs, you know what I mean? So it's just a matter of what you call it, what you want to end up doing ultimately. But I tell people to put a lot of their talent points into design and what makes things look cool versus like complete functional drawings, because those are great, but I think that's going to be a dying profession. Not the concepting stuff, but the modeling, like a person who does that brute force work. Because a concept artist could probably just do it now.
Yeah.
Like, check this out. Let's do some more Blender stuff. I love me some Blender. So let's design something here. Just a sweet little. Look at that. How beautiful is that? And then we can do decals. Yes. I think I showed you guys this. Oh, look at that. Look at this little stove that I'm making, dude. You know? And there's like so many like cool little decals to make like some cool concept art thingy. You know? And there's like more and more of these types of tools that are being created. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, everything is moving to like a very like you can just kind of be like a jack of all trades.
No, it's that there actually there's some truth to this. But what I'm trying to say is like if I am a character designer and I'm using 3D, the biggest difference between me and someone else who does 3D characters is that they would take my drawing, like for instance, this right here, right? They take this drawing and then turn it into a 3D model, 3D design, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm starting to get to the point where I don't think I need to, you know, like, let's do this. All right, you can. Yeah, I'm designing this like creature design, but it's all like all in 3D. And obviously, right now it's all bubbly, but hopefully, you get the moral of the story here. All right, and if I actually try to sculpt better, put my design aesthetics to this bizarre looking creature design now. You know, fix this anatomy, make it look less blobby. The only reason why something like this wouldn't go into a game engine is just because it's just so bizarre. Right? You know what I mean? And not bizarre, I'm sorry. It was too heavy, right? It's like you can get like 300,000 polygons. It's too big still. And if I want to get really detail oriented, where I increase the resolution to like millions, you know? Oh no, I have all my detail. Here, let's press enter. And let's do this. Yeah, what happened? Why is it doing that? Oh, look at that. It's being weird. That is super weird. Maybe if I do this. Okay, and then turn it back to voxels. Okay, yeah. All right, so then go ahead and increase the resolution now. And actually get a little bit more into those deets that I was talking about. You know? Picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah, for sure.
So like I would pass this to a modeler, and again, I'm putting very minimal effort, but imagine if I spent, like obviously I can paint much faster. So if I wanted to start with the concept, I can just start with painting like normal, right? Just to get the idea, get it approved at that level. But once what you call it, the the design is approved, right? And you have game engines that can now you can just plug it right in, or tools that allow you to plug it right in, you know? Like, what's the need to have like orthographic view, right? Well designed, boot for a modeler if I just designed it straight out of the gate. Make sense?
Yeah.
Like, this will take me a day to like really do a decent job on this, But that's like fucking nothing, dude. That means if I keep up that rate and get approval pretty rapidly, I could probably pump out several designs in a day. So now you're really just paying for artists,
Mm-hmm.
not for technique. So yeah, put a lot of talent points into the skill, my dude. You'll be all right. But all the other stuff that I told you is important, at least currently. Not for a lot of studios, but some studios still want that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
It doesn't hurt if you're still starting out to try to build a brand name for yourself. Because I had that stuff in my portfolio too. So
I had another question for you.
yeah, actually, hold on real quick. I need to go use the restroom. Give me 1 second. All right, got like 10 more minutes actually. So, ask your question, sir.
All right. I was curious. This one has always been on my mind. But at what point? Because I know there's obviously a difference between illustration and concept art. And at what point, if you're polishing a concept, you're drawing, like what point is it overboard?
Yeah, so I always opt aim for high polish, even if ultimately you start going into a realm of stylism. Because the reason why is because you have more versatility going the opposite direction, right? If you come from a direction of like super polished to stylized, it's a little bit easier pill to swallow versus going from stylized to realistic or highly polished.
Yeah.
And even if it's stylistic, I think you should still have your stylistic stuff look polished. Just polish. And the reason why is because polish has the most clarity, and clarity is a great tool, as you've learned throughout the class. Okay. Now, the difference between illustration and concept is that concepts don't have to be polished. Illustrations don't necessarily have to be either, but the difference is that you can get away with like a napkin sketch usually with a concept. Like if you have the right people involved, like some people could just look at it and be like, I get it. You don't have to like go all in and like fully do turnarounds and render it all the way out, right? Other people, you might have to hold their hand, so you got to just do that, right? Illustration, it's the final product. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Like you can't have like a half-made sandwich, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is my interpretation of a sandwich, right? You can't have like a half-made video game, right? This is my interpretation of a video game. You can't have like a half-made plane. This is my interpretation, and it like falls out of the sky, right? It's the final product. It's the product that is going to be final. An illustration is like key art.
Yeah.
Illustration is like splash art, right? Like on League of Legends, when you have the splash screen and illustrations. That art makes you want to buy the skin, or at least it's the first step to making you buy that skin.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if it was just like a rough sketch? Like, yeah, we're thinking like, it's kind of like this. Yeah. Like, wait, what?
And I saw like the Freeney art for like when they're first releasing champions. It's like a stick figure.
Yeah, there's they leveled up their splash art.
Oh, definitely.
you know?
Yeah, but I get it though.
So that's the big difference. Concept art is like more of like a tool to get to the final product.
Yeah.
Illustration is the final product. Especially to think about it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Any other questions about the rollout of here?
Hope it gets the bell.
All right. Still in class. Almost done. Okay. Any other questions? Almost done, skis. It's your last chance. I will say though, although I'm saying it's your last chance, like obviously, if you guys ever message me or send me an email, obviously I will respond at some point. You know, so it's not like the end of the road. Like I'm never going to talk to you guys ever again. Even when I was talking to Maya about how I'll be helpful as pretty much as often as I need to be, that's actually just true for all of you guys. It's not really, I wasn't necessarily saying only she gets special treatment. I just wanted to make sure she understood, you know? Now, this is true for everyone. Everyone here obviously can reach out whenever they feel. I have plenty of students who have done this and continuously do this. Not like to the point where they're like, I'm like their personal artistic servant, you know, just whenever they're feeling down or whenever they're really lost. The mentor part I take very seriously. You feel me?
Yes. And thank you for that, because that's extremely useful.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to call it quitsies here. Any last thoughts, points of views? Here, let's see what happens if this looks like pixel art. That's pretty cool. Let's see how low I can go. Let's go 120. Dude, why does my art look so cool in pixel art? Like it needs more contrast. That would be like in the illustrative mode, it's better. But here to really push those pixels. Hold on. I think that might just be true in general, actually. I think this painting is a little too low contrast. No, actually, yeah, that's fine. Okay, let's try. Let's go. Let's go deeper. 75. $50. Dun dun dun. Okay, now we're getting into like Super Mario World graphics. 2 pixels. Oh yeah! Look at my design.
Space.
My design is the Tetris piece, the S Tetris piece. I always
Yeah,
knew.
that's dope.
Even in its most simplest form, it's still iconic. That's how great of a designer I am. That's so funny. It's just, what do I do? Just turn it into a Tetris piece. That's so cool. Anyway, cool. Well, with that said, friends, it has been an honor. I appreciate you guys and all the hard work you put into my class. Thanks for supporting my class. I wish you guys the best of luck. If you guys ever have any questions outside of the class, I can always try to answer them to the best of my ability. Obviously, it's much easier if we're meeting in a classroom setting in which that time is available for you. But I do try to make time, even if it's only for 10 minutes or 15 minutes here and there, or if I send a voice message. There's always ways I can try to get around helping. But with that being said, cheers, friends. Have a good one, and don't be strangers to one another. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Anthony.
Bye.
Thank you.
It has been an honor. Cheers. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.